Hello, my name is Kayla Dike, and I'm so excited to celebrate 50 years of Toni Morrison's Bluest Eyes, which feels especially relevant in 2020 after Breonna Taylor's court hearing case. As you know, this will be a read-along, and I'll share some brief reflections after I finish my section. You can catch the full reading on the gram at Love as a Kind of Cure. So here's my reading. When the mood struck him, he would call a child passing by to come play on the swings with the seesaw. If the child wouldn't or did and left too soon, Junior threw gravel at him. He became a very good shot. Alternately, bored and frightened at home, the playground was his joy. On a day when he had been especially idle, he saw a very black girl taking a shortcut through the playground. She kept her head down as she walked. He had seen her many times before, standing alone, always alone at recess. Nobody ever played with her, probably he thought because she was ugly. Now Junior called to her, "Hey, what are you doing walking through my yard?" The girl stopped. "Nobody can come through this yard unless I say so." "This ain't your yard, it's the school's, but I'm in charge of it." The girl started to walk away. "Wait." Junior walked towards her. "You can play in it if you really want to. What's your name?" "Pecola. I don't want to play." "Come on, I'm not going to bother you." "I gotta go home." "Say, you want to see something? I got something to show you." "No." "What is it?" "Come on into my house. See, I live right there. Come on, I'll show you." "Show me what?" "Some kittens. We got some kittens. You can have one if you really want." "Real kittens?" "Yeah, come on." He pulled gently at her dress. Pecola began to move towards his house. When he knew she had agreed, Junior ran ahead excitedly, stopping only to yell back at her to come on. He held the door open for her, smiling his encouragement. Pecola climbed to the porch stairs and hesitated there, afraid to follow him. The house looked dark. Junior said, "There's nobody here. My mom's gone out and my father's at work. Don't you want to see the kittens?" Junior turned on the lights. Pecola stopped inside the door. How beautiful, she thought. What a beautiful house. There was a big red and gold Bible on the dining room table. Little lace dollies were everywhere. On arms and backs of chairs, in the center of a large dining table, on little tables, potted plants were all on the windowsills. A color picture of Jesus hung on the wall, with the prettiest paper flowers fastened on the frame. She wanted to see everything, slowly. But Junior kept saying, "Hey, you, come on, come on." He pulled her into another room, even more beautiful than the first. More dollies, a big lamp with green and gold base and white shade. There was even a rug on the floor with enormous dark red flowers. She was deep in admiration of the flowers when Junior said, "Here." Pecola turned. "Here's your kitten," he screeched, and he threw a big black cat right at her face. She sucked in her breath in fear and surprise and felt fur in her mouth. The cat clawed at her face and chest in efforts to right itself, then leapt nimbly to the floor. Junior was laughing and running around the room, clutching his stomach delightedly. Pecola touched the scratched place on her face and felt tears coming. When she started towards the door, Junior leapt in front of her. "You can't get out. You're my prisoner," he said. His eyes were merry but hard. "You let me go." "No!" He pushed her down, ran out the door that separated the rooms, and held it shut with his hands. Pecola banged on the door, increased his gasping, high-pitched laughter. The tears came fast, and she held her face in her hands. When something soft and furry moved around her ankles, she jumped, and she saw it was the cat. He wound himself around her legs. Momentarily distracted from her fear, she squatted down to touch him, her hands wet from the tears. The cat rubbed against her knee. He was black all over, deep, silky black, and his eyes, pointing down toward his nose, were bluish-green. The light made them shine like blue ice. Pecola rubbed the cat's head. He whined, his tongue flicking with pleasure. The blue eyes in the black face held her. Junior, curious at not hearing her sobs, opened the door and saw her squatting down, rubbing the cat's back. He saw the cat stretching its head and flattened his eyes. He had seen the expression many times as the animal responded to his mother's touch. "Give me my cat!" His voice broke. With a movement both awkward and sure, he snatched the cat by one of its hind legs and began to swing it around his head in a circle. "Stop that!" Pecola was screaming. The cat's free paws were stiffened, ready to grab anything to restore balance, its mouth wide and its blue eyes streaked in horror. Still screaming, Pecola reached for Junior's hand. She heard her dress whip under her arm. Junior tried to push her away, but she grabbed her arm, which was swinging the cat. They both fell, and in falling, Junior let go of the cat, which had been released in mid-motion and was thrown full force against the window. It slithered down and fell on the radiator behind the sofa. Except for a few shudders, it was still. There was only the slightest smell of singed fur. Geraldine opened the door. "What is this?" Her voice was mild. As though asking a perfectly reasonable question. "Who is this girl?" "She killed our cat," said Junior. "Look." He pointed to the radiator where the cat lay, its blue eyes closed, leaving only an empty, black, and helpless face. Geraldine went to the radiator and picked up the cat. He was limp in her arms, but she rubbed her face in his fur. She looked at Pecola, saw the dirty torn dress, the plaits sticking out of her hair matted where the plaits had come undone, the muddy shoes with wad of gum peeping out from between the cheap soles, the soiled socks, one of which had been walked down in the heel of the shoe. She saw the safety pin holding the hem of her dress up over the hump of the cat's back. She looked back. She had seen this little girl all of her life, hanging out in the windows over saloons in the Mobile, crawling over the porches of shotgun houses on the edge of town, sitting in the bus stations, holding paper bags and crying to mothers who kept saying, "Shut up!" Hair uncombed, dress falling apart, shoes untidied, caked with dirt. They had stared at her with great uncomprehending eyes that questioned nothing and asked everything. Unblinking, unabashed, they stared up and at her. The end of the world lay in her eyes, in the beginning and all the waste in between. They were everywhere. They slept 6 in a bed, all of their pee mixing together in the night as they wet their beds, each in his own candy and potato chip dream. In the long, hot days, they idled away, picking plaster from walls and digging into the earth with their sticks. They sat in little rows on street curbs, crowded into pews at church, taking space from the nice, neat colored children. They clowned on the playgrounds, broke things in dime stores, ran in front of you in the street, made ice slides on the sloped sidewalks in winter. The girls grew up knowing nothing of girdles, and the boys announced their manhood by turning the bills of their caps backwards. Grass wouldn't grow where they lived. Flowers died. Shades fell down. Tin cans and tires blossomed where they live. They lived on cold black-eyed peas and orange pop. Like flies they hovered, like flies they settled. And this one had settled in her house. Up over the hump of the cat, she looked. "Get out," she said, her voice quiet. "You nasty little black bitch. Get out of my house." The cat shuddered and flicked his tail. Pecola backed out of the room, staring at the pretty milk-brown lady in the pretty gold and green house, who was talking to her through the cat's fur. The pretty lady's words made the cat's fur move. The breath of each word parted the fur. Pecola turned to find the front door and Jesus looking down at her with unsurprised eyes. Brown hair parted in the middle, the gay paper flowers twisted around his face. Outside, the March wind blew in the rip of her dress. She held her head down against the cold, but she could not hold it long enough to avoid seeing snowflakes falling and dying on the pavement. From what I gathered reading from Pecola, I'm not very sure, but she seemed to be in a low place. And not in almost every single aspect, what I was saying. From what it was described, she had almost terrible living standards. And she didn't grow up with love. That's what I'm gathering from this. And also, from Junior's perspective, he said that no one had ever played with her, and he assumed that it was because she was ugly. In 2020, there are still very strong feelings about this. Many black girls feel as if they're isolated, even if it's not because of wealth reasons or class reasons, whether it just be the color of their skin or the way they do something, how they express themselves. So this is a little bit for my inner self when I was younger, rather than Pecola. But I would have to say, you really have to stay true to yourself. You just have to stay true to yourself, and you have to know that even if the world isn't going to support you, there are other Black women who are going to be there for you. And on top of that, you just got to do your own thing. Regardless of what anybody ever says to you, you have to do your own thing, and you have to love yourself. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be the strong Black woman in anything. You can cry. You can feel all the emotions you have to feel. There's nothing in this world you can't do. Regardless of what anybody in this world says, regardless of what people in power say, regardless of what media says, regardless of what your own family says, anything you want to do, if you put your mind to it, if you dedicate your time to it, if you dedicate yourself to something, whatever it may be, if it's just, living to a certain age and being happy, you'll do that if you dedicate your life to that. The clip, I think the whole Black community, but especially Black women, have been hit hard by not only George Floyd's death, but I don't want to say more importantly, but almost more heartbreakingly, Breonna Taylor's death, where none of her murderers were charged. During this time, this kind of hurts me, but during this time, we really have to lean on each other, because we've seen it time and time again that a lot of times we're just so unprotected, we're just so taken advantage of, and that's just the reality we live in. And more than ever, not only do we have to go out there and obviously, say what we have to say, fight for our rights, fight for everything that we want to see in the world, we have to do our inner fight, and we really have to support our fellow Black women and fellow women in general who are looked down upon. Because in America, the Black woman has the Black woman. We have to make sure that we are showing support, that we are loving our fellow Black women, that we aren't degrading them for hair type, degrading them for skin color. We have to make sure we are not putting into place the same harmful narratives. And the strong Black woman does have some weight to it, because you know what we're always going to do? We're always going to survive, and we're always going to push forward.